Chapter 14. Do it afraid. Luke 1:13. The angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah." Luke 1:30. The angel said, "Don't be afraid, Mary." Matthew 1:20. As he was thinking about this, an angel from the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife." Luke 2:10. The angel said, "Don't be afraid." The most repeated word in the Christmas story might be fear. In my many years of Sunday school, we have speculated that this fear had something to do with how terrifying the angels must look. The fear was about the angels. I wonder, though, whether the fear is more about us. Psychologists have long taught that when we encounter a dangerous situation, we immediately revert to the most basic brain functioning. We do not take our time and think through our options. We jump quickly to one of two choices, fight or flight. Why? Because we are afraid. We like to think of ourselves as lions, but we are much more often like a scared rabbit. Fear is something with which we all live. Some of us have conquered more fears than others. Some of us hide it better. The appearance of an angel, however, is sure to reveal who we are at our most basic level, fearful creatures bent on protecting ourselves. The year I graduated from high school, I decided that I was weary of being afraid. I embarked on a mission I called the Summer of Overcoming My Fears. One of those fears was water slides. I had enjoyed a camp's water slide in middle school until the mat under me decided to go down faster than I did. I shot out the bottom of the slide with slide burns on my arm and leg and swore off water slides forever after. By the end of high school, however, I was tired of missing out on youth group fun and had a vague memory of how much I had enjoyed the thrill ride before my injury, so off I went to the water park. My internal deal was this: I would not only ride one water slide to prove I was not afraid, I had to ride every water slide in the water park at least once. I was terrified walking up the steps of every single slide that day. Even after successfully enjoying one, I was terrified of the next. I was definitely kicking myself about this commitment to ride all the slides when I looked at the tiny tube that went straight down into a pool with laughing observers all around. I'm still convinced that any ride in which you're to cross your arms over your chest like an Egyptian mummy is closer to death than entertainment. But I did it. I slid down every single slide. A few I even rode more than once. I did it afraid. I am convinced that the primary thing that keeps us from loving one another is fear. As children, we are taught to run away from strangers because they might hurt us. As teenagers, we were afraid to be nice to the person everyone else teased because our friends might turn on us next. As adults, we continue these fears of those who are different from us, unsure by this time how to even reach across the gap that has only widened with time. This is where I believe the angel's words are not only for Zechariah, Joseph, Mary, and the shepherds. They're for you and for me. Do not be afraid. I don't think that means the initial fear goes away. I think it means something closer to do it afraid. In Zechariah's song of prophecy sung after the birth of his miracle son, John the Baptist, he reveals the purposes of Jesus for all of us. Luke 1:73 through 75. He has granted that we would be rescued from the power of our enemies so that we could serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness in God's eyes, for as long as we live. Jesus came so that we could serve him without fear for as long as we live. Serving him always includes loving our neighbors. When I first started ministering in the inner city, my missionary friend Sue recommended a book to me. A quote from that book changed my perspective on fear. A person in the will of God is safer in the most dangerous place than a person out of the will of God in the safest place. This quote came alive because Sue was living this reality right in front of me. In my young eyes, Sue was fearless. At the time, she was walking the streets at night, talking with and praying for prostitutes, addicts, and pawn shop owners. What I see now is that love had beat out fear in Sue's life. It's not that the fear was gone, it was that something more powerful had replaced it. 1 John 4:18 says that perfect love casts out fear. God so loved the world that he sent his son Jesus to come to our world and show us his love. Jesus has called us to follow in his steps. He has called us to love our neighbors, to love our enemies, to love our world. We can allow fear to rule our relationships by staying around people like us, or we can move outside our comfort zone and love anyone Jesus brings across our paths. We can do it afraid and watch love overcome fear. When we let this love direct our paths and change our hearts, Christ is born in us, and we participate in our own Christmas miracle. What are you afraid of? Have you been letting fear stop you from doing something God has asked you to do? Fear is a natural emotion, but it does not have to make the decisions. When God asks you to love someone, do it afraid. Acknowledge the fear, but let love make the decision. I'll never forget the day an elderly woman from our church knocked on my front door. I had known Phyllis for years, but had not spent much time with her. She was always most comfortable serving in the kitchen, and I was the same age as her grandchildren. I had just lost a baby to an early-term miscarriage, and my husband and I were devastated. Phyllis walked into my home, visibly nervous, sat down on my couch, and shared her heart with me. Decades before, she too had lost a baby, at a time when no one talked about such things. She felt that she needed to share her story and tell me that she understood. She cried and I cried, and a little part of both of our broken hearts healed that day. Before she left, she said, "I was so scared to come over here, but I wanted you to know that you were not alone. I felt so alone all those years ago, and I knew that God wanted me to come and tell you that you are not alone." She did it afraid. The differences in our ages did not matter that day. Neither did her fear. She allowed love to make the call, and it brought a little healing to both of us. Do not let fear keep you from loving those around you. Reach out in love. Do it afraid. 2 things. Do a word study in your Bible about fear. A simple way to do this is through the Bible Gateway website. Type in the word fear or afraid and start to read all the passages on fear. What does God say about fear? How do we overcome it? 2, who are you afraid to love? In prayer, surrender that fear to Jesus. Pray for your love to overcome your fear. Ask God to show you a specific action of love you can take toward that person, and do it afraid. Remember, we can engage with all kinds of people when we let love overcome our fear.